We are live. How is everybody? It says live in my window before the little notice comes on. I hope everybody's okay. First day of school here. Happy to have you. And I thought this would be a good topic. If you have a question about something else, always welcome. And I was going to talk about habits. So, who has some habits? Who has some really good habits? Hi, Heinrich. It's really nice to see you. How is the arm doing? Haven't seen you mention anything about that. I hope it's healing well. And welcome. I look a little ruffled today, don't I? I feel kind of ruffled today. It's Tuesday, but it's kind of like our Monday because we just had a long weekend here in actually North America. So both Canada and the US shared Labor Day weekend. And oh, I'm glad it's getting better. And so, yeah, so it's kind of like our Monday today. And getting things done, thinking about things. And this one is really something that I like to repeat and think about and talk about in regards to dog training, and that's a habit. So, drop in the chat if you think your dog has a good or bad habit, and are all habits equal? And if our dogs can learn a bad habit, why can't they learn a good habit? And I think that is something that we need to look at when we're living with our dogs, when we are bringing a puppy into our home and raising it, and thinking about the habits that they're forming, and are those habits what we really want? One little bad habit. Okay, let's hear the one little bad habit. You or your dogs. So we all have bad habits. So today is a bad habit of picking the wrong food choices for supper. It's one of those days. So my husband went and got me some Chapman's ice cream for supper. That's what I'm going with. And it's one of those days. Not hot here. It's a beautiful day, and so, anyways, yeah. So good and bad habits, and I think that's something that we need to think about when, like I say, when we're bringing our puppies into our home, and just living with our dogs is something that we want to think about. We bring the puppies into our home, but behavior is always happening. It's always changing. It's going to change, especially as they grow and develop into their different, as we call them, developmental stages. They go through different processes, and I see a lot of pet parents struggling and not focusing on little habits that they want their dogs to do. So, I know one of the first ones is when they come into our home is they have such razor sharp teeth. We don't want them biting us like crazy. And puppies bite. That's just what it is. Their jaws aren't strong, but their teeth are so sharp because they get feedback from the other puppies. Needless to say, we don't want them to get into a habit of constantly chewing on us or biting at us. And so we do want to be mindful about letting them rehearse that. And if we want that, puppies are going to bite. So let's give them something legal to bite, and then manage our environment so that they're not biting us. Grates are really great for that, and I think they're really underutilized these days as a safe spot, as a spot to grow really good habits. And even when we're just hanging out, it's a really good habit for our dogs to be in, just to hang out in our crate. But what are some other habits? when we expand on that and which ones are bad. So my border collie wants to jump on me when we are out walking. I do not know why. Well, he might be telling you something when you're out walking. Yeah, more information. So he may be, are you going in the wrong direction? Are you not, maybe your border collie is really excited and that is just over arousal and that's how it's coming out. I don't know. It's always when it's dark outside. Maybe your dog is telling you that they don't feel completely comfortable walking in the dark if it's not happening on any other walk. So that's where we have to play detective and kind of look at trends. That's probably the best way to, because they can't tell us. And the best way for us to figure things out is to actually look at trends. And if we've got a behavior happening in one scenario but not the other, then we need to find out what is the difference between those two scenarios. So never during the daylight. So, you know, for me, then it's like, okay, maybe this dog has, you know, is not crazy about when it's dark outside, or maybe because it's dark outside and I'm thinking this is the end of the day, maybe my dog is just overtired and they really don't want to go for another walk. Or maybe they are just, they're done. They've had enough. So walks at the end of the deal. He wants a hug and then he's satisfied. So that's a habit that you've gotten into. So if he knows that when you're going for a walk and he gets a hug, that's a habit as well. But the other thing to think about when we talk about the concept of habits is when we think about habits that we have, we often don't actually think we don't have to think very much about those habits, and that they become muscle memory. So we really want to focus on the good habits. And for example, routines can be good and bad. So if we're feeding our dogs at the exact same time every day, is that a good or bad habit? It can actually be a bad habit, because now we're not teaching our dog to be flexible in regards to their meals. And some owners, and I've seen this with my own dogs, depending, you know, it depends on their personality as well, they become really stressed when we're not following through with the routine, and they actually start throwing off stress behaviors. So it is nice to change that. That's a habit. The other thing that in regards to muscle memory is we want to teach our dogs things where another word for it is that it's overlearned. They don't really have to think about it. It's just so automatic, and the muscle memory is there that it's just happening. And I think this is where we want to start thinking about, okay, I've got muscle memory happening, or I've got a behavior happening. My dog does it really well inside the house. And as soon as we step into another picture, it is not a habit in that picture. So something that I was today, I actually shot a little bit of video, so I'll post them tomorrow. But something that I like to build muscle memory for my dogs responding to me when they hear their name. I use other sounds as well. And basically I've trained them to respond, and I can use that to call my dog off of something. And I wasn't shooting my camera today, and I should have, so maybe it will arise again tomorrow. But I'll show you some of the things that I do when I'm out and about with my dog. Is I try and create a lot of muscle memory or really fast reactions everywhere I go with them. So I don't want them just responding to me in the house. And so um, the one exercise that is a really, really good foundation exercise is Love My Name. And, a lot of owners say, well, my dog knows their name, but can they hear their name all the time, anytime? And that is something that is really helpful in creating muscle memory, and that they are responding to it really fast no matter what is happening, because it's just so strong, and they are turning around and looking at you. I'm just going to read this. When you train a dog with a lot of bad habits, usually reparenting the dog, letting become a puppy again and create new routines, and let all the developing phases in a dog's life be done once more. Yeah, so if you're saying that when a dog goes into their home new, yeah, we just start new routines. They understand it's a different location. Will some of the old habits come in? It's like, yep, but it's nice to just disregard them. I agree with that, if that's what you're saying, if I am understanding correctly, and focusing on the habits that I do want to build. So I play Love My Name with my dogs a lot. You do have to be careful sometimes if you have somebody in the family that is overusing your dog's names. I have that, but it kind of works out. You can use an interrupter noise instead, but I do use Love My Name. So anywhere I go with my dogs, I will just say their name, and I'll throw them a really high value reinforcer. So they're learning that in that picture, when they hear their name, it's a really good deal. And I'm creating that muscle memory. I'm doing some classical conditioning, really. And then I quickly switch from, and classical conditioning is just creating really, well, it can be a bad response, it can be a positive response. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create that positive feeling about what I'm doing. Pavlov's bell, for those people who have taken basic psychology. So you hear the bell ring and it means food. Then that sound becomes really important, and then you can transition into using that sound, waiting for the behavior to happen, because there's an anticipation of what's going to happen, and then you can reinforce the behavior, so you kind of switch over into a different type of learning. They're all melded together anyway. And the reason why I do that is, well, first of all, for me, I like to build a recall when my dogs are young. It is a very important skill for me, because I do want my dog to respond to me as fast as possible. So I want that to become habit, muscle memory. And the only way that I can broaden their learning is to keep expanding it into other locations. So I want my dogs to hear me, and they're not machines, and they're not going to be 100%. And there's probably some variables that I may not have worked through. And it depends on the learner too, of, how powerful certain distractions are for that particular dog. And, that's just information for you. But as an example, I don't like sending my two dogs out in the backyard at once, because they just kind of fuel each other, and it's almost like they make things up and they want to go running out. But if they think they're running after something, and this is in the beginning phase, if I say their name, they just like turn around and what, So it's a response that they don't have to think about too much. So obviously, I do practice this in the backyard as well. I practice it when squirrels are hopping around. So right now, squirrels are starting to hide their nuts and stuff for the winter time. So they are bouncing around a little more in the backyard than I like. And sometimes birds are sometimes mistaken as possible squirrels jumping around. Um, so that's a really strong habit that I want my dogs to have. Again, it's muscle memory. So they are, there's not a lot of thought that goes into that. And that's because I do practice it in as many locations as I possibly can. So again, depending on your dog's learning style, some dogs will generalize that and take it into every picture, and there are some dogs who simply don't. And Henrik, I mean, you have Border Collie, so correct me if I'm wrong. They're the type of breed that they're very discriminative of their pictures and understanding that, this is a different page and this is a different page. And actually, I do have a dog like that. I have a Border Terrier, not a Border Collie, but a couple of that I've had, they've both been very, not necessarily generalizing. As soon as the page is turned and there's a new picture, they just need to learn and understand the what I'm asking them to do, and learning through those habits. They understand more than I do. Yeah, usually, usually dogs do understand way more. Actually, usually animals understand way more than we do. Um, so, building good habits, I think, is undervalued when we're bringing a dog or a puppy into our home. So it can actually help us down the road. It can help us prevent certain behaviors from even starting. And, you can change them when they've started. It's just, if anybody has ever heard, it takes 3 weeks to establish a new habit, that's pretty much in the psychology books, and it is a rule that is used for animals as for most animals as well. And it's also us that gets into the habit of how we interact with our dogs and what we're asking for. And again, it's really good on our side to get into the habit of focusing on everything that our dog does know and understand. So I'm kind of morphing into another topic, but I try and teach my dogs a lot of different cues, meaning different things. I sometimes will teach a cue that I might teach several cues for a particular behavior, and that's just expands their learning. It gives me an opportunity to have better communication with my dogs, and when we as owners teach our dogs a lot of cues and what their meanings are, we now have a way to ask them to do something else instead of whatever they're doing, and focusing on stop behaviors, which I'm seeing a lot of new pet owners really getting hung up on. How do I stop this, and how do I stop that, and how do I stop this? So let's look at building habits, and they don't have to, and they can be like little tiny habits, so that it's easier for the dog and it's easier for you. I believe they'll love to learn new behaviors too. Yeah. So so my dogs went running out. They wanted to start barking their heads off. Not something that I like to do. I do typically ask them for something else instead. And, I can ask them to be quiet and they'll be quiet. I didn't really want them running off to the corner of the yard, which normally is okay. But I just said their name and they just bounce back really quickly because it's such a strong habit. Um, so, that is a really good example of where Love My Name can be expanded even further into other environments. If you have a dog that, like I say, my dogs don't really fence run per se. If they think there's a squirrel, they might go running, but, they're so used to being, responding to their name or other cues that they're pretty fast in giving me those behaviors just because I've built the muscle memory, if that makes sense. So habits and muscle memory are the kind of the same thing. If we think of, not a lot of people smoke anymore, but people who smoke, they have these really strong habits and associations are built. I'm just thinking when clients, the husband was having a sandwich when I got there and he walked out of the room and the wife was really upset, and I said, don't worry about it, because I know smokers, they gotta have a smoke after they eat. It's a habit, it's a strong habit, and those are hard to break. So those are some habits that we can have. If we think about driving a car and we've switched from a standard car to a automatic car, and we get in the car and suddenly our foot is reaching for a clutch that isn't there. So that's a habit, it's overlearning, it's muscle memory, and it takes us a while to stop that. So those are examples of what a habit and how muscle memory works for us. Trying to think of other analogies, because sometimes analogies help us make sense of things. And we don't have payphones anymore. I'm showing my age. I don't think there's any around anymore, but some of you may have or may remember that, if you've ever found, here it was always a quarter to use a payphone, and you found a payphone or found a quarter in a payphone, that was free money. Every time you walk by a payphone, you always check to see if there's a quarter in there. That's a habit, and it's also something that becomes overlearned. There's probably no muscle memory with that, but it is a habit. So that's also a really good example. So is there any behavior right now that you want your dog to overlearn? And that's really what it is. So I don't know if there's anybody else on here. I think besides Henrik, I think there's somebody else viewing, and that's okay if you don't want to come on, and that's fine. Even if you're, you think about, dogs wanting to jump up on you, and if you don't like it, some of us do like it and some of us don't mind. But what can we get our dogs to do instead? And true. Muscle memory is pretty powerful, really powerful, and it's something that we can do for our dogs. And we can build muscle memory for sit behaviors. We want to be a little bit careful when our dogs are young so that we're not overusing some muscles when they're young before they're developed. But just you can build muscle memory for alternative behaviors that you want your dog to do instead of the thing you don't want them to do, if that makes sense. So and I am going to drop tomorrow just today when we were out for a walk, I was just doing some name game, and then also demoing how I will still every once in a while classically condition, meaning I'll just say my dog's name if they're beside me and throw them a treat. And then, if it's a new area, I will definitely do that. Today I did it just because I wanted to videotape a couple of things. So once they were distracted in doing something, I just had to say my dog's name, and they turned and checked in with me. It's, no, their name isn't supposed to be a recall, but the thing is I do have two dogs. So if I specifically want to call one dog, I'm better off using their name, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with our dogs learning that when they hear their name, it means, hey, mom just said my name. I'm going to pay attention to her. And essentially that's what a recall is paying attention to us and wanting to come over and check in with us. Those are the nuts and bolts of a recall. So for sure, that's something that I want to build. Yes, my dogs do know come. My dogs do know some positive interrupters. I don't, my dogs do know just other sounds, attention noise sounds. That's probably, yeah, they're positive interrupters. They're just sounds that, hey, it's a good deal when I check in with my mom and I hear that. So, it's a good habit to get into. It's a great way to teach your dog to respond to you instead of trying to say no, which no is a stop behavior. And I'll back up a little bit. I am the kind of trainer that a lot of trainers say you should never use no. But again, they're just sounds when we build associations. So my dogs, all the dogs that I've had over, I don't know how many years, no is actually a positive interrupter for them. So when they hear it, they actually check in with me, because that is something that I do teach right from the get-go. And so in my case, in my house, and it is no means yes. So no means it's a good deal if I check in with my mom and I hear that sound. So that's a really great way to turn the tables onto something instead of, in my mind, yes, I don't want maybe my dog's headed into a direction that I don't really want them to keep going. But because I've made the NO sound a positive sound, they stop and check in with me. I can say their name too. That's why it's nice to have a lot of different cues, and essentially they do kind of have the same meaning. And just continually building on the of them responding. So that's what we really yeah, I don't either, Heinrich. Like I say, in the training world, a lot of trainers will say, oh, you shouldn't say no. And I had this discussion with, she's actually one of my mentors, and she's got her master's in applied behavior analysis. And then when I said, well, this is how I teach it, she stopped. She looked at me, yeah, you're right. So it's a sound. It does not have an aversive meaning in my home anyway. And that's how I do like to teach it. It would be, like you say, it's no different than teaching love my name. So it's about love the word no. When I hear the word no, it's like, oh, I'm going to give my mom attention. And that way, they don't continue on with maybe something that looks like I don't want them to do. And then sometimes I will wait and see if they're actually on the wrong path and not going to do the right thing and not say anything, and then I can praise them for not doing just, disengaging. I hope that makes sense. I use the word no, but in a gentle way, and it works perfectly. Yeah, like I say, uh, for me, no is kind of like I say, no means yes. So in my home, no means pay attention to mom. And that's how I've trained it for quite a few of my dogs. And I still teach that. And I think we need to, if we understand, if we're going to understand how learning works, we need to look at what we're saying in regards to, this is bad. I can use a swear word and make that my, recall word. Dogs don't know. It's just a sound association. And obviously, if you're using it in a normal tone, they understand that it's not a big deal. Not to say that it's sometimes a good thing to maybe use some of our words with some urgency in case there is an emergency, because we blurt it out like an emergency, and our dogs still want to respond and understand it's nothing bad and nothing bad's going to happen. So we are at our half hour, and I hope that you have given you some insight. I have talked about habits before. It's nice to build the small habits with our dog and look at them in break them down into tiny pieces in regards to a habit. So even a walk is a habit, and we can break that walk into a lot of small pieces, and a lot of those pieces can be practiced in many different ways. I'm just working on a webinar where I'm going to incorporate that kind of stuff for walks for dogs that do struggle when they see another dog, and how we can incorporate muscle memory and habits into our learning to slowly create some success as well. So many years ago, I had a small dog called Attack, and it worked great to shout out his name. That's cute. I'm sure other people were wondering, what the heck? That's pretty clever. So, okay, so if anybody has any questions, if you've taken the time to watch this, thank you. Very grateful. And if you are watching replay, hashtag replay, that would be great. As well, if you have any questions, please drop them in. If there are any subjects that you want me to cover in the lives coming up every Tuesday, I would love to hear from you. And I hope everybody's having a good week this week, first week back to school here. And hopefully, if you have kiddos in the house, they're doing okay. And I will say good night and stay safe, and I will see you next week.